Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ryan Makes Sense, where we talk about personal finance, investing, and chart analysis. Today I've got a good one for you. If you have been watching my recent videos, I had talked about the periods of when to make money by George Tritchs, not Samuel Benner. Samuel Benner has created publications, but the recognition always goes towards Samuel Benner and not George Tritchs. Anyways, looking at all of the historic major housing crisis within the United States over a period of time, and also looking at the famous chart above to the right of my head, left of my head, whatever, um, looking to see how those fall on the periods of panic. There has been a lot of skepticism around the Great Financial Crisis and how it was not called out by George Tritch. However, I do want to offer a differing opinion and kind of meet in the middle with people who disagree potentially. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and switch screens and let's go ahead and look at George Tritch's chart to get you guys familiar. And then we're going to look at the timeline of major housing crashes within the US. Let's go. All right. So, if you don't know about the famous chart by George Tritch, we can see George Tritch here, compliments of George Tritch. Periods of when to make money. George Tritch actually created this and had it on his business card. It says GEO Tritch Hardware. It's kind of cut out on the top right. Let me see if I can help let you guys see. So here's his business card, George Tritch, back in 18, not 18, yes, 18, 29, I believe. Let's look down here. Yep, compiled 1872. I'm sorry, 1872. While Samuel Benner used this in 1875, he calls it the pigs, iron, crops, etc. Anyways, so this chart, let me introduce you guys. So we have period A up here. It said years in which panics have occurred and will occur again. And to just put any skepticism to rest, right here, you guys can't see it. Right here is 2019, right before the Great Lockdown, whatever you want to call it. So that is periods of panic that have occurred and will occur again. And then we have period B right here. It says years of good times, high prices, and time to sell stocks and values of all kind. And then we have period C right here. Years of hard times, low prices, and a good time to buy stocks, corner lots, real estate, goods, etc. Hold till the boom reaches the years of good times, and the years of good times are right here. So it is 2023. Where do you guys think we are at? I'll give you 2 seconds. Okay. I'm going to go on over to the right. So we are right here. This is 2020. Oh, dang it. So right here, this is 2023. So according to this chart made in 1872, this is the time to buy stocks and time to buy corner locks, goods, assets, etc. I'll let you be the judge of that. So we now are familiar with this periods of when to make money. Let's just go back. So we had the Great Lockdown over here, right? Oh, my head. Oh, my goodness. I just cannot get in a good spot. So right here was the Great Lockdown. Right here, 1999, the dot-com bubble. 1981, I can't recall. I can't recall these off the top of my head. However, I have a wonderful video that goes over all of the panics all the way back to 1819 and 1783. So I'll put that video right over here so you guys can see it. Check it out. It's one of my most popular videos. So now let's look at all the crashes in the in the US for housing. Excuse me. Okay, I'm gonna reset this so we can come back to it and it'll be nice and easy. All right. So right here we have timeline of major housing crashes in the US. So we have the Panic of 1837, we have the 1873 stock market crisis, the 1929 Wall Street crash, which is right next to the Great Depression, right here, and then we have the 2008 housing bubble, Great Financial Crisis, whatever you want to call it. So let's first look at 1837. All right, so 1837 is actually right here. So right here, this was a period of panic and when to sell your house. So I think this one, thinking of the magnitude, the 1873 panic was was an event that affected everybody. So it affected the lower class, middle class, upper class, etc. It affected politicians, people of power. It affected everybody on the spectrum of humankind, basically. Um, this is kind of the times 1873 when America is becoming established. So it was felt by everybody. So I understand that this was the Panic of 1873. This honestly makes sense. And I did want to reference this Harvard website. So I'm not crazy and my head's in the way again. So this is a Harvard website, and I just want you guys to see historical collection, Harvard Business School right here. All right, so 1837, the hard times. Historians have tradition. Let me just blow it up. I'm a history person, so let's read this stuff. If you want to skip to the next chapter, go ahead. So historians have traditionally attributed the Panic of 1837 to a real estate bubble and erratic American banking policy. Most speculation concerned Western land open to settlement after Indian removals, but northeastern forests were among the most overvalued holdings. One contemporary observed, the speculation in Maine timberlands was the first in order, the most extravagant and irrational, and the most ruinous to those engaged in it. In Massachusetts, Nahant Bank, right here, and Boston's Oriental Bank fell victim to the speculative fever when their assets became dangerously concentrated in unimproved Maine land far from navigatable waterways. An 1838 survey confirmed that this property was grossly overvalued and both banks failed. Developments in banking compounded the crisis. The money supply swelled when the Bank of the U.S. lost its charter, and each of the nation's 850 banks could again issue banknotes, a private form of currency, with little restraint. This paper money then depreciated rapidly when the President Jackson's specie circular of 1836 mandated payment for government land in gold or silver. 10 months later, banks refused to redeem their notes in specie, bringing commerce to a standstill. New England escaped the worst of the crisis thanks to Boston's conservative banking establishment, which, led by the Suffolk Bank, curbed the excess of the rural banks. All right. The 1837 crisis and the six-year depression that followed had lasting effects on the American economy. The credit ratings industry, for example, has its origins in the hard times of late 1830s and early 1840s. So many businesses failed that Lewis Tappan, a prominent opponent of slavery, founded a company that offered subscribers up-to-date and comprehensive credit information on the businesses in their communities. Tappan's firm, the Mercantile Agency, built on the abolitionist connections to create a nationwide network of credit reporters that was direct predecessors of today's credit rating firms. That is amazing. The effects of the Panic of 1837 are also were felt far from home. Global trade with China factored into and was transformed by the crisis. Rapid credit expansion and avid speculation in tea, silk, and other products of the Celestial Empire contributed to the failure of merchant houses from London to New York and Boston in the late 1830s. In the aftermath of the crisis, many New England traders like J.P. Cushing redirected their capital from China trade to American railroads. That is some wonderful facts about 1837. We do see here 1837 was predicted right here. Oh my gosh. 1837 was predicted right here as a panic. This again was compiled in 1872. All right. So that takes care of number one. This type of panic was not only felt across the US, but also had to do with China, England, etc. A lot of tie-ins, a lot of speculation. So, I mean, that was just a ripple through everybody that everybody felt, it feels like. So having that as a as a panic period, 1837, that makes sense to me. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is the 1873 stock market crisis. So let's go back to our George Tritchs thing over here. In 1873, we can see it is a period of panic. So considering it is a period of panic, it is something that is going to basically ripple across, I don't want to say the globe, but it rippled heavily through the US and maybe it included some other countries. So let's get some more information on 1873. So over here we have, this again is Harvard. I'm back on the Harvard Journal. 1873, off the rails. You guys can see all of the text. Yes. All right, 1873, off the rails. The Panic of 1873 originated in the rapid expansion of the American securities market in response to the capital demands of the war effect and railway development. All right, so again, the US stock market for capital demands, also of the war effort and railway development. What could go wrong? We're going to find out. Many small investors got their first taste of the securities market while buying bonds floated to finance the United States Civil War. When the war was over, railroad entrepreneurs found a ready market for stocks and bonds to fund the massive expansion that culminated in the Union Pacific Railroad's completion of the first transcontinental route in 1869. But 2 years later, allegations of graft linking Congress and the Union Pacific's funding arm, the Credit Mobilier, weakened confidence in railroad financing. Interesting. The trigger for the Panic of 1873 was the failure of J. Cook and Company, America's premier banking house. Cook made his name as the chief financier of the Union Army, but he was a latecomer to railroad finance. By the time he agreed to fund the Northern Pacific Railways project to connect the Oregon coast with the existing Northeastern Rail network, the first transcontinental line had already been completed. Fears of overcapacity, along with the cost of overruns and the general distrust of railroad securities, after the Credit Mobilier scandal depressed Northern Pacific bond prices in 1873, Cook's firm closed its doors in September, precipitating bank runs, a U.S. stock market panic, and some argue a worldwide depression that some scholars believe extended into the 1890s. Experts disagree on the underlying causes of the Panic of 1873, but most emphasize the ebb and flow of investment from Europe. J. Cook, for example, was one of many American bankers who established a London house in the 1860s as part of a broader effort to secure European funds. Cook's difficulties in 1873 were compounded by the U.S. Treasury's decision to force him to share the profits of floating a government loan with a syndicate that included major European bankers such as the House of the Rothschild and Barings Brothers, not to mention Cook's main American rival, the German-educated J.P. Morgan. We know who they are. German investors played a particularly large role in financing American railroads and in instigating the panic. The German appetite for American railroad securities increased in the mid-1860s after the United States emerged from civil war and indemnity payments from France after the France-Prussian War further swelled the German capital available for overseas investment. However, demand contracted contracted suddenly in 1873. Liberalization of the German economy meant increased availability of investment opportunities closer to home, made still more attractive in comparison to the scandal-ridden American railroads. Finally, the bursting of a real estate bubble, what we've been waiting for, in the capitals of Central Europe led to a banking panic of May 1873. American financiers like Cook, who had made plans in the expectation of European funds, were hard pressed to stay solvent when those funds failed to materialize. Well, it took the whole article to get to the real estate bubble, but basically it just sounds again huge development of railroads, not only in the U.S. but Europe. We had one man who was taking great risks. Um, Sorry, my computer is not working. So there's a lot of disputes on what exactly caused the Panic of 1873, but we had the expansion of the American securities market. So we had the stock market expansion. We had the war efforts, the railroads completion of the first transcontinental route in 1869. 2 years there was a scandal with the Union Pacific arm. Um, we had Jay Cook's banking house being, I don't want to say fraudulent, but just questionable. So quite a few things. Cook's firm closed its doors for bank runs. So again, just a lot of worldwide pressure, a lot of growth here, and it just kind of the growth feels like it got ahead of what was actually happening, and things failed. And I could see that being going back here to the 1869, or I'm sorry, 1873. I can see that being a period of panic. It is not only a U.S. thing with U.S. securities expanding as much as possible, but also having to deal with, uh, financial reporting that was not accurate or true, while, in Europe also having similar, not opportunities, similar things going on. Um, so, I mean, a lot of things contributed to this, in my opinion. I don't know if we could pinpoint on one thing. But let's move on to the next one. The next one is the 1829 Wall Street crash. When we go to the periods of panic, 1829, we can see right here, this is 1927. So right up to the Great Wall Street crash, the Great Depression, whatever you want to call it. Excuse me. So let's go back to our Harvard Journal. My head's in the way. So right here we have the Great Crash. All right, I'll put my head back. Okay, 1929, the Great Crash. Let's go ahead and go through this together. Unique historical materials in Harvard University collections throw light on the role of the regional exchanges in the stock market crash of 1929 and the regulation of the securities industry during the New Deal. The stock market bubble of the Roaring Twenties is legendary. Less so is the rise of the regional exchanges, particularly the Boston Stock Exchange, though New York Stock Exchange business also increased its proportion of the overall securities market, decreased while business at the formerly sleepy regional exchanges increased several times over. It's a weird sentence. Part of the popularity of the regional exchanges was due to the lax listing requirements that made them particularly attractive to firms engaging in dubious issues, such as highly leveraged investment trusts. Firms listed on one of the regional exchanges were subject to only two relatively toothless state regulation known as blue sky laws that were designed to keep companies from selling investors valueless securities such as shares in the sky. Interesting. These firms could often be listed on the other exchanges with no further questions asked, a practice that was sharply curtailed after 1929. So very fraudulent, questionable securities could be easily sold on another exchange. Is that kind of like the OTC markets nowadays? I don't know. Going down. I only say that because there are some good companies on the OTC exchange. The Securities Legislation of 1933 to 1934 and subsequent founding of the Securities Exchange Commission, SEC, have been regarded as a successful chapter in financial regulation. These efforts bear the stamp of Harvard professor of law James Landis, one of the first legal academics to target the problem of regulation, until then left largely to elected legislators. Landis blamed the failure of previous regulation on a disconnect between legislation and administration, a dangerous gap he bridged by both by careful drafting and by serving as the chairman of the SEC. Unlike so many craft draftsmen of regulatory legislation, wrote Harvard Business School professor Thomas McCraw, Landis recognized the importance of matching the sanctions to the problems. One of the strengths of the New Deal's SEC was its ability to co-opt various participants in the securities market, notably the accounting industry. Accountants initially viewed the new agency with suspicion. To gain their cooperation, Landis sagely positioned the SEC as an institution that would increase an accountant's independence from corporate managers eager for favorable audits. I'm sorry, these sentences are crazy. Recent scandals notwithstanding, Landis methods dramatically improved accounting practices in the US and integrity of the securities market. Awesome. This does not mention the Great Crash. Let's see if we can just Google 1929 housing crash. Oh, here's some good stuff right here. I'll bring this up. Housing 1929 to 1941. Oh my God, this is a book. We're not going to read the book. Let's read the metadata text right here. The building of new homes came almost to a halt. Repairs went unfinished and slums expanded. The crisis in housing attracted special attention. Okay, so this is around 1929. Okay, some good info over here. I'm just going to move it so you guys can see. What happened in the housing market in 1929? The Depression dealt severe blows to both construction industry and the homeowner. Between 1929 and 1933, construction of residential property fell 95%. Repair expenditures decreased from 50 million to 500,000. In 1932, between 250 to 275,000 people lost their homes to foreclosure. Ouch. Okay, so this is 1929 to 1923. So if we are right here, I'm just gonna zoom in and then I'll fix it for you guys. Okay, let's go to 1929, 1923. Okay. Right here. So we have 1924 right here. You guys can see that. 1927 was the period of panic. So from 1927 to 1931 is basically when we saw housing become really bad for people. So between 1929 and 1933. So looking at the cycle right here, so from the top, 1927 was the period of panic. So I think I could say the period of panic would have been somewhere right here. This is also 1926. So 1924 is right here. 1924 is here. Then we have 1926, 1927. So I think from 1927 to 1931 is a 4-year period. So right here would be 1929, which is halfway down. So 1929 to 1931, but they did say this happened from 1929 to 1933. So I would say this occurred right here all the way to like right up in here. So from period B to period C and on the way back to period B. So this is a period B to period C type of failure, whereas the first two right here were period A housing crashes. You guys can't see my screen. Where's my mouse? So these two right here are period A housing collapses. The 1929 is a period B to a period C. Now remember, this is important in the future. So now let's go down to the Great the Great Depression of 1930s to 1940s, and see what we can glean, just because this is such a huge timeline. So again, 1929 to 1933 is a period B to period C. Now let's just zoom out here. Okay, and let me just fix this. All right, so we're gonna be more so on this side now. Okay, let's go back to Harvard. I think they don't have the Great Depression on here, so we're going to have to do our own research here. So housing crash during Great Depression. Okay, so we have the 1929, 1933 already captured. If we continue to see these dates mentioned, I think we are okay to continue onward. Yep, so 1929 to 1932 again. 1932. Okay, so during the Great Depression, the houses were particularly hurt early in 1930s. Meanwhile, the Great Depression lasted until 1940. So we are good to skip over the Great Depression because that is kind of considered right here with the Wall Street crash. So you know what's funny? Well, I mean, sorry, it's not funny, but you know what's ironic is whenever the stock market crashes, it takes the real estate market a few years to catch up to the stock market. So now let's look at the 2008 housing bubble, which we can just go down here. All right. I'm going to move my head so we can read together. All right, so this is housing crashes between 2000 and 2010. The 2008 housing crisis is one of the most severe in recent history. Mass foreclosures and unemployment is rife. Let me see if I can blow this up for you guys. Yes, okay. All right. The most recent comparative market today is the first decade of the 21st century, going into the early 2000s, the dot-com bubble. The US and the rest of the world was going through a housing bubble. The rate of mortgage fraud skyrocketed, and the country entered into the century with an early recession. Despite these facts, the mortgage denial rate halved between 1997 and 2003. By the end of 2006, the Federal Reserve had decreased interest rates from 6.25% to 1% in an attempt to put off inflation. This caused a significant increase in the cost of lending, and many borrowers saw their loan repayments escalate by 60%. During these few years, the Federal Reserve also had a looser approach to supervising banks and lenders, many of which abandoned loan standards such as measuring employment and income history with borrowers. With the cost of lending increasing so greatly and markets going through a correction, the bubble had to burst sometime. All right. In 2007, real estate crashed completely with hundreds of thousands of homes going into foreclosure, multiple subprime lenders declaring bankruptcy, and the market requiring government bailouts. The market continued to slow down with fiat prices and home sales being the biggest trend. The subprime mortgage industry suffered widespread collapses, including the closure of some of the nation's biggest lenders at the time, like New Century Financial. Real estate was not the only industry affected, with many other fields experiencing bankruptcies due to the credit crisis. The global stock market also faced correction and volatility. Considered to be one of the biggest economical downclines since the Great Crash of 1929 and the 2008 housing market still having palpable effects on the economy that are being felt today. And here's a chart 1990 home ownership rate down to 67%. Okay. So we've got our information. I don't think this chart or this website has anything else. So I'll link all of these websites that I've referred to. Let's go back to the Tritchs cycles. So now this is 2007. Move my head. Whoops. All right, 2007. So 2007 is right here. And we had the great financial crisis from 2008 to 2012. As we can see, this is a period B to period C crash. So this is similar to the Great Depression crash, the crash of the stock market, Wall Street crash, etc. So 2007 here to 2012 right here. A lot of people say that George Tritchs did not get this right. However, if we're looking at the boom period, which is period B, being period B, and then period C being the good time to buy stocks and assets, would we have been well off buying houses and stocks in 2012? Yes. Would we have done very well selling those stocks in 2019? Yes. That's basically near the top of the bubble for us. Um, so just putting everything into perspective, I believe George Tritch's chart has a lot of weight to it in terms of accuracy, considering how old it is. This is over 150 years old, which is crazy. Um, so yeah, I just want to talk now about 2023. So we are in 2023 right here. As it relates to housing, because we're going to keep this about housing, do you know what happened in 2023 that could lead to a similar failure as a 2007 to 2012? Let me tell you. Have you heard of the 2-1 rate buy down? If you go to a lender, you can probably um, get an option or hear options from, if not your lender to another lender somewhere in your area, of a 2-1 buy down. So basically today, as of April 15th, whatever today is, April 20th, 420, today's rates are 6.4, let's say. I go to my lender, they say, hey, for your first year, your rate can be 4.5 instead of 6, or 4.4 instead of 6.4. Awesome. That sounds amazing. I can totally do a 4.4 payment. So the 2-1 buy down is you get two years of lower rates and then you assume the rate going forward. So 2023, I'm paying a 4.4 mortgage until 2025. Awesome. 2025 to 2026, I'm paying a 5.5 mortgage. 2025 to 2026, I now assume whatever the freaking mortgage rate is. Currently, rates are at 6%. If we get to like 7, 8, 9, 10% for rates, people have to assume those rates. They are screwed. You know what I'm saying? They took the 2-1 buy down. They are now stuck with that property and they are going to have a higher mortgage rate for the third year, which puts us at 2026, which is right here. You know what happened in you know what happens in 2026 to 2032? You're supposed to sell yourself 2026 and then rebuy back in 2032. So am I saying that the 2-1 buy downs are adjustable mortgage payments in disguise? Yes, they are, because your rate is going to adjust and you're going to be affected and it's going to suck. So that's what I see coming. I think maybe a lot of people may see this coming. Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know what the current data is in terms of people doing 2-1 buy downs as of today, but that is a catalyst that we could see that could wipe out tons of people. Um, so what do you guys think the next catalyst will be? It is currently 2023 right here, and it is apparently a good time to buy stocks and real estate. What do you think is going to happen in 2026? Do you think we will see a bull market from 2023 to 2026, and then will we see a bear market from 2026 to 2032? I will let you guys be the judge. But please, if you made it this far, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts on what you think could happen in 2026 to 2032. And then also from 2032 right here to 2035 right here, we should see some very good times. Anyways, I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for sticking around. Please, again, subscribe, like, do something great. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.